Jesus loves me, this I know. So for some reason on my laptop, which I use a lot more these days, it converted my Office applications to Microsoft 365 and wanted to do the web-based, and I could not figure out how to get my apps back. Well, I just figured out how to get my apps back, so I'm super excited. I'm old school. I like it when not everything is web-based. Anyway, what I want to do is take you guys through just a cursory overview of, without going into too much detail because I don't want to make this video too long to where people don't want to watch it. But I want to impress upon people the importance of understanding that Ezekiel 38 and 39 is not Revelation 19, is not Revelation 20. There are, let's move these over a little bit, give us some extra room to work with here. Ezekiel 38 and 39, I'm going to call Gog and Magog 1.0. To be distinguished from Revelation 20's second incursion of Gog is 2.0. And then Revelation 19's Armageddon is in between. Now what I want to start here is by differentiating, just like I said, some cursory overview things, because if there are any differences, they're not the same. So we can go through a list of 5 differences, or we can give you 2 differences. It doesn't really matter how many we give, because if there's one, they're not the same. This is what we need to make sure that we do to keep our Bible study as integrous as possible, is simply because something is similar does not mean it is the same. And so there is a huge propensity from people I have noticed. In fact, if you go to my earliest video on my channel, you're probably going to find me 8 years ago or so talking about how Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is different from Revelation 19's Armageddon. Like, this was the first thing I started out by talking about. And I'm not sure exactly why it was the first thing, but it just was, and it wound up being the subject matter of my very first book also. So this has been, I suppose, very near and dear to my heart for a hot minute. And what we observe just by going through some of these, the imagery presented in these chapters, is there are definitive differences. And again, we have to settle upon, if there are any differences at all, is not the same. And if there are any differences and you still think it's the same, then you are simply interpreting the Bible incorrectly. I don't know what else there is to say. If there are any differences, because the Bible is not going to be inconsistent. So if you observe inconsistencies and you're still saying things are the same, then the problem is with your interpretation. So what I want to do here is start with the leader. This is Gog. Gog is given a burial place in the valley of Hamon-Gog. Specifically stated, his entire army is given a burial place. Regardless of whether, well, he's not going to be a fallen angel. He can't be, because they don't die. So he's going to be, he's a principality, means he's a supernatural entity. But he's going to have a physical body and he's going to die. He's going to be given a burial place. It's very specific in the plain text of that his whole army is going to be buried. Which means that he can't be Apollyon, who is the beast from Revelation, because he is tossed right into the lake of fire, because he is an angel. So is the false prophet. So they're not buried. They can't die. If you go back to Revelation 13, it explained this very clearly, that he's given the appearance of a deadly head wound. Yeah, because he's a spirit being. Angels can't die. So he and the false prophet are going to be thrown directly into the lake of fire. No burial place. And then Satan in Revelation 20, with the second incursion of Gog and Magog, he's going to be loosed from the bottomless pit at the expiration of that 1,000-year kingdom to go round up unbelievers from the nations to come against Jerusalem, the camp of the saints round about, and that's not going to work out well. And that's clearly just before the Great White Throne. So right off the bat, we have leaders that are different. Now, what I want to do is differentiate here and here, and talk about another reason they can't be the same. Apollyon is the beast that was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go about his destruction. Revelation 17:8 tells us this, and Revelation 13 mirrors some of that text. Revelation 9 tells you who he is. He's the angel, the king of the locusts, the angel of the bottomless pit. Gog in the Septuagint, and actually let me just pull this up for you. This is from the Septuagint version that I use in some of my other videos to talk about, but this is Amos 7. Thus the Lord showed me, and behold, an early offspring of grasshoppers coming. Behold, one locust larva, Gog the king. Gog is the king of the locusts. Ezekiel 39 talks about how the army of Gog and Magog is going to be composed of mighty men, and the Septuagint actually says giants. So whether they have the physical appearance of giants or whether they are just supernaturally bad in origin, demonically driven, it doesn't really matter. What we're told is that Gog is the king of the locusts. Gog dies, and he's given a burial place in the valley of Hamon-Gog. When we next see this locust army, which is tied to the book of Joel, chapters 1 and 2, they have a new king over them. That would be Apollyon, Abaddon, the king of the locusts, Revelation 9:11. When they are next seen, those locusts that had Gog as a king in Amos 7, when they're next seen after Gog and Magog, they're coming out of the bottomless pit, the little demon locusts from trumpet 5. And in Revelation 9:11, it says they have a king over them, who is the angel of the bottomless pit. In the Greek, his name hath Apollyon, in the Hebrew, it's Abaddon. So because Gog dies, and he's given a burial place, they get a new king, who, when they next appear, will be Apollyon, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit to go about his destruction. Now, what we're told about him is from Jude and from 1st and 2nd Peter, is he's one of the angels who sinned against God and has been confined to the bottomless pit since the days of Noah, when the earth was destroyed with water. And Jude very clearly tells us that they're in everlasting chains under darkness until judgment of the great day. Everlasting chains means that they haven't been loosed. From the time they were bound, they have not been loosed until such a time as they will be loosed for their purpose, specifically this guy, trumpet 6. So everlasting chains tells you that they've been bound with no interruption from the time that they were bound till the time that they will be unbound, which is amidst trumpet 6, close to the midpoint of the 70th week. So the locusts presently have a king over them, Gog, who's going to die. When they reappear, they will have a new king over them, who is the king of the locusts, the angel of the bottomless pit, who is presently bound in everlasting chains under darkness until the judgment of the great day. Specifically, trumpet 6, Revelation 11:7, we're told that he will, for the express purpose of killing the 2 witnesses, he will ascend. The beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, shall overcome them and kill them. Then he's given the appearance of a deadly head wound, but again, he's a spirit being an angel, he can't die. Which again tells you specifically why he wouldn't be, there would be nothing other to do with him in Revelation 19 when Jesus comes back other than to toss his butt into the lake of fire, which is reserved for the devil and his angels. And then 1,000 years later, well, Satan's going to be bound at the beginning of the chapter, and then after the 1,000 years he'll be loosed, and it is him that stirs up the nations to come against the camp of the saints in Jerusalem just before the great white throne. So maybe you knew all that, maybe you didn't know all that, but if you didn't, now hopefully you do, and you can say definitively that these 3 events have 3 different leaders, which means they're not the same. Because again, we operate on the premise that if there's any difference at all, they are not the same. So, who are the parties? Well, Ezekiel 38 and 39 is Persia, Ethiopia, Cush, Put, House of Togarmah, Libya, that's probably Cush and Put, or probably Libya and Ethiopia, Gomer, and then Gog's army. So let's merge and center that. Maybe. We're going to merge and center that. Okay, and let's do location too. Location. This is going to be on Bashan, which is the Golan Heights. Let's wrap all the text. There we go. Sorry, I'm formatting this as I go because this is rough and dirty. I'm not going to do any differences beyond these 3. We're just gonna talk about these. So, who are the parties that are involved in Revelation? Well, that's the beast, the false prophet, kings of the earth, everyone who takes the mark of the beast worships beast, and 10 kings. That's who that's going to be. And where's the location? This is outside of Jerusalem. You could say Megiddo. Make this a little bit smaller. Megiddo, Armageddon, obviously. But it's outside of Jerusalem, and it's the blood up to the horses' bridles by the space of 1,600 furlongs. It's the treading of the wine press. All right, so let's do this. Clearly, I didn't plan this ahead of time. So we're just doing this together, okay? So all of this information is from Revelation 14 and Revelation 19. But it doesn't actually take place in Jerusalem. And then here, this Jerusalem. Compass the camp of the saints round about in Jerusalem. Oh, well, we'll do one more thing, and that's how they die. Who's involved in this? It would be Satan and all nations who didn't choose to believe in Jesus. Jesus during the kingdom. So let's actually just read that in case, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory here. Revelation 20. Went out to deceive all nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle. The number is whom as the sands of the sea. So yeah, it's all nations. It's every single person who didn't choose to believe in Jesus during the kingdom. Because when they go into the kingdom, there's 100% believers. And then obviously people will be born into the kingdom and die in the kingdom. Or rather be born in the kingdom and have to choose for Jesus in the kingdom. Cause of death. Cause of death. I'm going to have to make this smaller now. So sorry. We'll do this one last thing. Cause of death. Okay? So what is the cause of death in Ezekiel 38 and 30? Well, let's start with Revelation 20 since I have it open. Fire from heaven. God sends fire out of heaven to devour the armies. And this is what they said. They went up, or this is what Revelation 20 verse 9 says. They went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints about and the beloved city. So, Jerusalem. And fire came down from heaven out of God. Gosh, I can't read. Fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. What gives, man? Cause of death. This is the sword that proceeds out of the mouth of Jesus. Pretty simple. I think we all know that. Revelation... Nope, Ezekiel 38 and 39. Actually, this is chapter 38, verse 21. I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, saith the Lord God. Every man's sword shall be against his brother. And I will plead against him with pestilence. It's hard to type with a Bible sitting in front of me, sorry. And with blood. And I will rain him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, and overflowing rain, great hailstones, fire, and brimstone. So I have understood that people want to stand on whatever hill and die on it. That somehow Ezekiel 38 and 39 is Revelation 19's Armageddon. Not only are they not even similar, I think the only similarity would be that it's judgment before a separation. It's a battle that occurs just before a separation event, just before a resurrection, just before the beginning of something else. So Ezekiel 38 and 39, and then also you have the fowls that are called to the supper of the great God and will be filled with the flesh because they're going to feast on the people who die in Ezekiel 38 and 39 and in Revelation 19. So that would literally be the only similarity that you could call from this that I observe. But basically what you have in every single one of these cases is Ezekiel 38 and 39 is a judgment event. It's a battle and a judgment event. It's a separation event because the rapture is going to be tied to it. There's a resurrection, which is going to be those who have previously fallen asleep in Christ, and those who are alive and remain at his coming going to be caught up, separated, and you have the commencement of the 70th week in the next chapter, Ezekiel 40. Here, you have Armageddon, which is your judgment event. You have your separation of your wheat and tares. You have a resurrection, which is going to be the Old Testament saints from Isaiah 26 and Daniel 12, and you're also going to have the resurrection of the trib saints and martyrs, and then you're going to have the beginning of something else, which is kingdom. And here you have a final battle, which is Satan rounding up those people who are deceivable to come against Jesus for the final time. You have a separation event because the people who don't participate are saved and the people who do participate are not. And you're going to have all of those people killed. And then you're going to have a resurrection event, which is the great white throne, and all the dead from all ages are going to stand before it and be tossed into the lake of fire. And then the new beginning after that is eternity, where those who are righteous are going to spend it with Jesus in New Jerusalem, and those who are unrighteous are going to spend it in the lake of fire. So you have similarities, very, very cursory, very broad, overarching thematic similarities. And then you've got birds. That's all you've got. They're different. So if anyone has any further questions, I literally just sat down to throw this together right in front of your faces. But if there are any differences, they're not the same. So maybe the only things that you couldn't glean from a surface reading of the text is the Gog and Apollyon and who Gog was as far as the king of the locusts. Then he dies and they get a new king over them from Revelation. Maybe that's not completely surface because you have to dig into the text a little bit, and then you have to understand that there's no way that Gog could be Apollyon because Apollyon's been in everlasting chains from the time he was confined in the days of Noah until the time he will be released in trumpet 6. So there's absolutely, positively no way that he could be this guy because this isn't linked to trumpet 6. And if you think so, then there's a whole other slew of issues you've got going for you, and we're not going there. So again, if anything is different, then they're not the same. This is just 4 ways of deciphering that these are not the same things. So if you had questions beyond this, let me know. Hopefully by now I have addressed all of the potential outstanding questions. And if people still want to argue, then you're just going to have to do it somewhere else. Take care.